Okay, so today we are diving deep into this book you shared with me.
Okay.
The New Rules of Work, the Muse Playbook for Navigating the Modern Workplace.
Go ahead.
It's by Alexandra Kavallakos and Catherine Minshew,
Right.
the founders of themuse.com.
Yes.
We've got excerpts from the book. We also have some really impressive praise from people like Ariana Huffington
Wow.
and Alexis Ohanian.
Oh, wow.
So really big names. It seems like, and I'm gathering this from what you shared with me, it seems like there's a huge shift happening in how we even think about our careers these days.
Totally.
And that's what we're going to kind of unpack today.
Yes.
Our mission, I guess you could say, for this deep dive is to pull out the most important stuff from the book
Okay.
that can really help you navigate this whole ever-changing career landscape.
Yeah.
But we're not just talking about finding any old job.
Right.
We're talking about thriving in work that you find genuinely fulfilling.
Absolutely.
So that's where we're going to be focusing.
Yeah. And I think right off the bat, what's so fascinating about this book is the central idea that Kavallakos and Minshew present. They're not just talking about, getting a decent job.
Right.
Their ambition for you, the reader, is to find work that really genuinely excites you, aligns with your values, and ultimately gives you that sense of fulfillment.
Right.
And they really drive home the point that things have profoundly changed in the world of work, even in the last couple of decades.
Right.
So much so that, the old advice that we all got growing up about careers
Right.
just doesn't cut it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. All the old rules, they're kind of out the window.
Exactly.
And so that's really what we're here to unpack, right?
Right.
These new rules and what they mean for you, specifically you listening to this.
Exactly.
And you had mentioned that you wanted to really gain knowledge quickly and thoroughly.
Yeah.
But you didn't want to feel overwhelmed.
Right.
So that's how we've designed this deep dive. We're going to break it down. We're going to make it super clear and really try to give you very practical, actionable takeaways
Perfect.
that you can actually think about and start applying right away.
I love it. Let's do it.
All right. So the book kicks off with a really fundamental question.
Okay.
What do I actually want?
Right.
What do I want?
It's a good question to start with.
It's a huge question, but it's where they start.
Yeah.
And I think they start there because it's this whole thing about self-assessment, which they put as the first step in any kind of career redesign.
It's crucial, right? If you're
Yeah.
thinking about changing careers, you're thinking about maybe just improving your current situation.
Right.
Or, you're actively searching for a job. You have to start with that self-assessment.
Mm-hmm.
What are your drivers? What are your core skills? What are the qualities that you bring to the table?
Right. And I really like how they introduce this idea of a career hypothesis.
Oh, yeah, me too.
It just takes the pressure off of having to perfectly map out your entire future.
Right. Totally.
It's more about having a solid starting point, an educated guess.
Yeah, it's like a starting point. It's not the ending point.
Right.
It's okay. Based on what I know about myself right now,
Right.
this path seems interesting. I'm going to check it out.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is super relevant, I think, in today's job market.
Yeah.
Because, they point out, the options are just so much more varied and interconnected than they were for previous generations.
Absolutely. Think about our parents' generation. They might have imagined a more linear progression.
Right. In one field.
In one field, you climb the ladder. But now, with technology and globalization, there's just this web of possibilities
Right.
across sectors and roles. It's really cool, actually.
Yeah. And I mean, it is exciting, right?
Yes.
But it also can be super overwhelming.
For sure. So many options.
Too many options. But the authors frame this, the fact that we have all these options, they frame it as a huge opportunity.
Right. Totally.
It's this freedom to find a role that's not just good on paper,
Right.
but it's really a perfect fit for you.
Yes. Absolutely.
And it's not just about what you do day to day.
Right.
They emphasize considering things like the company's culture.
Yes.
What is their overall mission?
Yeah.
Do they offer flexibility?
Right.
Are there opportunities for learning and growth?
Absolute.
So it's looking at this whole picture.
The whole package deal.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think this aligns so well with the vision they had for the Muse.com.
Right.
It wasn't just to be another job board.
Right.
like all the others. It was to provide tools for discovery,
Right.
to really help you explore career paths, to get a feel for different company cultures, and ultimately to help you find those opportunities that align with your values.
Right. Skills and interests. It's all about like tailoring the experience to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like a personalized journey.
Totally.
And speaking of that, they dive right into like, okay, how do you figure that out?
Okay.
Like, what is that perfect fit?
Yeah.
And they talk about identifying your values.
Yes.
So when we say values in this context, career context, what exactly are we talking about?
So in this context, values are really talking about those fundamental principles that give you a sense of meaning and purpose in your work.
Okay.
It's about what makes your work feel significant to you.
Right.
So is it creativity? Is it the chance to contribute to society in some way? It's those deeply held beliefs that make work matter.
Right.
And the interesting thing is that research shows that when your work aligns with your values, you're way more likely to be satisfied in your career
Okay.
and successful.
So it's not just, I like this job.
Right.
It's like, this job makes me feel good as a human.
Exactly.
It resonates with who you are.
It resonates with who I am.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to help us pinpoint this, right? Like, how do I figure out what those values are? They break it down into categories.
Right.
So let's run through them really quick.
Okay.
First, we have mission and impact.
Okay.
And this includes things like, do you want to contribute to social change? Do you want to be in service to people?
Right.
Do you want to, have influence over others and how they think?
Yeah.
Be involved in making big decisions, working ethically, giving back to your community. So it's about making a difference.
Making a difference. Yeah.
Okay, next category, social interaction, collaboration, and teamwork.
Right.
So this is like, how do you like to interact with people at work?
Right.
Are you somebody who thrives in a really social environment?
Yep.
Or do you like to kind of work more independently?
Right.
Do you want to be part of a team, a collaborative team? Do you like to lead and manage others?
Right.
Or do you crave autonomy? Right. And kind of like independence. So it's really about your ideal work relationships.
Yeah, work relationships, that's huge.
Okay, next we've got routine.
Okay.
So this is about your preferred work environment
Okay.
in terms of like the structure and the predictability.
Right.
So do you like working under deadlines?
Okay.
Do you want like a ton of variety in your tasks, or do you prefer more consistency?
Right.
Do you really crave attention to detail?
Right.
Is flexibility super important to you?
Right.
And do you want to travel as part of your job?
Yeah. Travel.
So it's really about the rhythm
Right.
of how you work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, next up, we have reward.
Okay.
So this is all about not just like the money, the compensation,
Right.
but also, do you need like public acknowledgement of your accomplishment?
Yeah.
Do you really crave like security and stability in a job?
Right.
Is prestige associated with the role important to you?
Right.
So it's really about, how are your efforts recognized?
Recognized and valued.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
All right. And finally, we have challenge and expression.
Okay.
So this is all about, do you want to be learning and growing all the time?
Okay.
Like always mastering new things.
Right.
Do you need creativity in your work?
Okay.
Is like competition and risk-taking exciting to you?
Right.
Do you want like physical engagement in your job?
Oh, interesting.
So it's how you grow and express yourself through your work.
Yeah.
So they give you a really actionable step.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, go through this whole list of all these categories.
Yeah.
Figure out what's most important to you.
Yeah.
Rank them. What are your essential values?
Right.
And they say the ones you rank highest, those are the ones that should be driving your career
It's
decision.
like a non-negotiable, right?
Yeah.
You have to have those top three and then filter every career decision through that lens.
Totally.
Yeah. But it is important to remember that these aren't set in stone.
Right.
They evolve over time.
Yeah.
As you grow and change.
Yeah, exactly. So once you've kind of figured out those values, the next step is to start exploring industries and functions.
Right.
And they make this point. This is like one of the new rules of work.
Okay.
You are not stuck in the industry you start in.
Oh, that's good to know.
Right.
Yeah.
It's good to know.
Yes.
You can shift gears.
Right.
And the range of roles or functions, as they call them, has exploded thanks to technology.
Right. It's so interesting how technology has changed the game.
Right.
Like think about job titles like mobile designer
Right.
business systems analyst, web content director. These aren't just in tech companies anymore.
Right.
They're everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so cool.
So to help navigate this, they introduced this, like, framework, the Muse Grid.
Okay, the Muse Grid.
Can you break that down for us?
Yes. So the Muse Grid is basically a 4-step process that helps you organize your research by looking at both function, which is the type of role like sales or marketing,
Right.
and industry, which is the sector like healthcare or tech.
Right. Okay.
And you look at both of those before you even start homing in on specific companies.
So it's broadening before you narrow.
Exactly.
Okay.
Broaden and then narrow. It's about understanding the type of work
Right.
and the industry that aligns with you
Right.
before you get fixated on a particular company.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are those 4 steps?
Okay, so step 1 is all about brainstorming.
Okay.
So just listing out any industry or function that intrigues you.
Okay.
No judgment, no filtering.
Just, like, let it all out.
Just let it all out.
Okay.
And even including like really unconventional ideas at this stage.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Step 2 is then doing some online research into those functions and industries.
Okay.
So what do people in those roles actually do day to day? You know, what's it like?
Get a feel for it.
Get a feel for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What's step 3?
Okay, step 3 is actually building your Muse Grid.
Okay.
So populating it with all the functions and industries you've brainstormed and researched.
All right.
So you could do this in a simple table
Okay.
or even a mind map.
Okay.
You know. But the idea is to have some sort of visual representation of your options.
Okay. So you're starting to get it down on paper.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And then step 4 is digging deeper into each function and industry that's on your grid.
Okay.
So you're looking for specific roles,
Okay.
you know, companies within those sectors,
Mm.
and even like influential people in those fields.
Oh, okay.
And you're looking at this all through the lens of your values.
Right. So we're bringing it back to what's important to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all about like how well does each career path align with what you've already identified as important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they really stress the importance of this research phase.
Oh,
right?
absolutely. It's an investment in your future.
Right.
You know,
Mhm.
the more effort you put in up front,
Right.
the more clarity you're going to gain.
Right.
And the better equipped you'll be to make decisions down the line.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think as you're researching too, you'll probably start to meet people that can help you,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Connections.
Connections, yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. And they even talk about using calendar blocking, like actually scheduling time
Oh, yeah.
for this exploration.
Yeah.
So it doesn't get pushed aside,
Right. Right.
you know? Make it a priority.
Yeah. Because it's easy to say, I'll get to that later.
Right, exactly.
Well-
It's easy to push it off,
Totally.
but don't do it.
Okay. So once you've done your research, online,
Right.
the next tool they talk about is mining the field,
Okay.
which is basically informational interviews.
Oh, yeah, I love informational interviews.
So this is like talking to people who are actually doing the work.
Exactly. Get that firsthand insight,
Yeah.
you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I think for a lot of people, reaching out to like strangers,
Yeah.
especially people in positions that they admire,
Yeah.
it can be really daunting.
Oh, for sure.
So what advice do they give on that?
So they acknowledge that, yeah, it can feel scary,
Right.
but they make a couple of really important points. First, they emphasize that most people actually really enjoy sharing their stories and advice,
Okay.
especially if you ask in the right way.
Right.
You know,
Right.
everyone's probably benefited from someone's advice at some point.
Totally.
Yeah. Right. And second, they say it gets easier,
Okay.
you know,
Right.
like anything, the more you do it.
Practice makes perfect.
Practice makes perfect.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So who should you reach out to initially, to make it a little bit easier?
So start with people you already have some kind of connection to.
Yep.
You know, maybe it's a college alum,
Right.
a friend of a friend.
Okay.
But generally, those people are a little more likely to respond
Because there's that connection.
because there's already a connection.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And what about like the questions you should be asking?
Yes. So it's all about preparing specific questions that address those gaps in your knowledge.
Okay.
So don't ask things that you could just easily find on LinkedIn or the company website,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
Ask questions that give you that insider perspective.
Okay.
Like, what's different about working at your company compared to other companies in this industry?
Okay. Okay. I like that.
What are your day-to-day tasks really like?
Okay.
What are the best parts of your job?
Right.
The worst parts of your job?
Right.
What advice would you give to someone trying to break into this field?
Okay.
Who tends to thrive in this kind of work? Who doesn't?
Right, right.
So really trying to get that personal, insightful response.
Yeah, those are good questions.
Yeah.
So after this whole research phase, how many kind of focus areas should you have, ideally?
So the goal is to narrow it down to a maximum of 3 target functions or industries.
Okay.
This helps you to really focus your efforts as you move forward.
Okay.
You don't want to have too many options on the table.
Right.
That can get really overwhelming.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're narrowing it down.
You're narrowing it down, yeah.
And at this point, even after all this research, you're still not committing, right?
Exactly. This is still about exploration and refinement.
Okay, gathering data.
Gathering data, yeah.
Okay, so then they move on to this idea of test driving potential paths.
Oh, yeah. This is great.
Which is a great way to, get firsthand experience and clarity.
Absolutely. Trying it on.
Yeah, like trying on different hats.
Exactly.
So what are some of the ways that they suggest you can test drive a career?
So they suggest a few things. One is being a shadow. So basically, ask someone in your target role, hey, can I just shadow you for a half day?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
See what their work is really like.
Sit in on the meetings.
Sit in on the meeting. See how they interact with people,
Right.
Really get a clear picture.
Okay.
And then another option is internships, even if you're not a student.
Oh, okay.
So part-time internships, summer internships, these can be really valuable for career changers
Okay, that makes sense.
who are trying to gain experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they also recommend just immersing yourself in the field.
Okay.
So reading industry blogs and newsletters, attending conferences and events, listening to podcasts.
Right.
Really get a feel for the current topics, the language they're using, the culture of the industry.
Yeah.
And then, if possible, they suggest taking on projects at your current job
Okay.
that align with your interests.
Yeah.
So that's a low-risk way to explore a different area without making a full career jump.
Right. I like that. They even share a story about someone named Rick
Oh, yeah.
who initially went into pharmaceutical research,
Oh,
but he hated sitting at a desk all day.
right.
And ultimately he went back to medical school
Oh, wow.
to become an ER doctor.
Oh, wow. That's a big change.
Yeah, it's a big change. But it really shows that sometimes a career shift might mean taking a step back,
Yeah. Right.
maybe like a pay cut,
Yeah.
in the short term.
Right. But it's about the long term.
It's about the long game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so after all that self-discovery, part 1.
Right.
Part 2 is all about making your move.
Right.
So taking action.
Let's do it.
And the first thing they dive into is building your personal brand.
Okay.
And I think this is a term that gets thrown around a lot.
Mm.
So in this context, what does personal branding actually mean?
So they emphasize that in today's job market, employers are looking for people who not only have the right skills,
Right.
but they also have a really strong sense of who they are,
Right.
and they can present themselves well,
Okay.
both online and in person. So a strong personal brand helps you establish yourself as knowledgeable
Okay.
in your field. It gives employers insight into your personality,
Okay.
and ultimately, it can give you a big competitive edge.
So it's like creating a narrative about who you are.
Exactly.
Okay.
More than just listing your skills.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So what are the steps? How do you activate this personal brand?
All right. They lay out 5 key steps.
Okay.
The first step is to identify your core attributes.
Okay.
So your strengths, key personality traits.
Okay.
And they recommend seeking feedback from about 8 to 10 people you trust.
Okay.
So friends, peers, mentors,
Right.
people you've worked with. And they even give specific questions to ask.
Oh, okay.
Like, how would you describe me in 3 words?
Okay.
If you were introducing me to a professional contact, what would you say about me? What traits do you most admire about me? What makes me unique?
Right.
So really trying to get a sense of what those core attributes are.
Yeah. So it's a little scary to ask for feedback,
Yeah, but so valuable.
but so valuable.
Right.
Okay. So step 2.
Okay, so once you've got that feedback, step 2 is to draft your branding statement.
Okay.
And this is just 1 or 2 concise sentences
All right.
that capture who you are based on that feedback.
All right.
So it's like your professional identity
Okay.
in a nutshell.
Okay. Step
Yeah.
3.
Okay, step 3 is all about refining your online profiles.
Okay.
So update your social media,
Okay.
especially LinkedIn,
Right.
to reflect your brand statement.
Okay.
So Use similar language.
Okay.
Use keywords that are relevant to the roles you're interested in.
So you're basically making yourself discoverable.
Exactly.
Okay.
Recruiters are out there searching. You want to be found.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Step 4.
Okay, step 4 is creating a personal website.
Okay.
So a lot of people think, oh, I don't need a website. I'm not like a designer or anything.
Right.
But they make a good argument that no matter what industry you're in,
Okay.
it's a great platform
Okay.
to showcase your brand.
Okay.
You could put your resume on there, maybe a portfolio,
Okay.
you know, even if it's not like visual work.
Right.
Maybe you have reports or data analysis,
Okay.
you know, a blog, links to your social media,
Right. Okay.
and it also makes you more discoverable
Okay.
in search engines.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the 5th step to activate your personal brand.
Okay. Step 5 is to activate your network.
All right.
So leverage those existing connections,
Okay.
you know, share your website, engage in conversations online,
Okay.
you know, let people know your skills, your aspirations,
Right.
what you're looking for.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like building a personal brand is not just like a one and done thing.
Definitely not. This is an ongoing effort.
Right.
They say, you know, maintain and strengthen your brand.
Okay.
It requires weekly, monthly, yearly effort.
Okay.
So review your profiles, engage with your network, update your website.
Right.
It's about evolving as you evolve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've built this brand.
Right.
Part of leveraging that is networking.
Okay.
Now, a lot of people, when they hear networking, they think like awkward professional events, you know,
Right.
forced conversations,
Small talk, yeah.
but they frame it as a more continuous process.
Right. It's about building those long-term, meaningful relationships
Right.
with people,
Yeah.
you know, friends, colleagues, new contacts,
Okay.
not just like transactional interactions when you're looking for a job.
Right.
And, you know, social media has really changed the game.
Yeah.
It's made it so much easier to connect
Yeah,
with a wider range of people.
totally.
Yeah.
And so for those of us who maybe are a little intimidated by networking, what advice do they give to make it a little more approachable?
So first they say, you know, most people are actually happy to share their experiences and give advice.